This is the first main video for syntax. This is from Chapter 5 of Contemporary Linguistics, written by O'Grady, Archibald, Aronoff, and Rees-Miller. The introduction is the first two sections of Chapter 5, and there will be a second video for the second part of the chapter. And we also have some supplementary slides that may end up in videos at some point, but they aren't at this point of creating the video. So first introduction, what is syntax? Syntax is all about sentences, right? So it's sentence structure. It's looking at the grammaticality of sentences and organizing them. So a grammatical sentence would be the flower is red, and an ungrammatical sentence would be flower the is red. So there's something in your native speaker mind that tells you whether a sentence is grammatical or not. So you already use syntax. We are just learning to map it today. So the asterisk symbol means that a sentence is ungrammatical. So you'll see this quite often in syntax. A sentence is grammatical if a native speaker finds it acceptable. So there is a language for which you are very good at syntax already inside of your mind, and you're going to work on mapping those sentences now. So why do we say one but not two? So syntax can actually explain why that is acceptable and not acceptable. So we're going to use transformational or generative grammar. The book introduces it as both. We'll keep talking about it as generative grammar. They're the same. So what is generative grammar? A system that generates grammatically correct sentences. A system of generative grammar of English will correctly predict that one is grammatical for Spanish, but two is not grammatical for English. So number one, la flora roja. La is the, flora is flower, and roja is red. And this is grammatical in Spanish. But if you translate it directly into English, it is not grammatical. It's a flower red. If you translate it into English, you have to flip it around to match English's phrase structure. So it becomes the red flower. So what's the difference is that adjectives follow nouns in Spanish, but they precede nouns in English. Noam Chomsky is the father of modern linguistics. He has a little bit to say about all of the theoretical concepts, and he proposed this idea of universal grammar. Universal grammar is the idea that languages follow a universal system. So, and that all languages follow a universal system. And regarding syntax, is there a universal syntactic system that can explain the sentence structure of every language? And that's what we are doing. So in generative grammar, it's made of a lexicon and a computational system. A lexicon is just a mental dictionary or vocabulary list where words are stored in memory and they have their function attached to it and their use attached to it. The computational system is the operations for forming the sentences. So merge combines grammatical elements, and move moves elements to new positions in the structure. So we'll talk in video 2 about underlying structures and how things can get moved to create the new structure. In video 1 here, we're going to talk about merging. We probably won't say the word merge more than just about here, but that's what we'll be doing this entire time, is we'll be combining grammatical elements. Okay, so the first part is categories and syntax. And we're going to go through these 4 sections: categories of words, phrase structure, sentences, and tests for phrase structure. So first is categories of words. So parts of speech, how to determine the part of speech. There's several tests to do that. There's meaning and inflection and distribution tests. There's 3 different tests. And I should be clear too that there are 3 different tests. However, they don't work for every single situation, but they work for the most part. You can usually do more than one test to double check something. So nouns generally refer to people, places, and things. So that's one. When you're going with meaning, you want to make sure that if you're working with a noun, it's talking about a person, place, thing, or idea usually. A verb is an action, sensation, and states something. An adjective refers to properties or attributes of nouns. They go with nouns. Adverbs are attributes or properties of verbs. They go with verbs. Some words can belong to multiple categories. So the book on the table, in this case, the book is an object and it's a noun, and I booked a room. In this case, book is an action or a verb. Inflection. Certain parts of speech can take certain inflections. So you can test it by figuring out if you can add these parts to these inflection markers to the word, and you can figure out if they belong in the category. So adjectives take EST or ER, so fastest or smarter. Nouns take plural S and possessive apostrophe S, dogs or students. Verbs take tense inflection like ED or S or ing, so running, walked, talks. Not all words in these categories can take these inflections, so oblivious is an adjective, but it cannot take ER, oblivious, or sing is a verb, but it does not take the past ED seemed. That's why you use more than one of the tests to figure out where it goes. So distribution is the third one. So one of the best ways to determine this part of speech of a word is to use the distribution test. Distribution is with what words a given word can occur and or its position in the sentence. So nouns occur with determiners, and or the students, the box, and envelope. Verbs occur with auxiliaries, will, has, is, are, etc. Will run, has eaten, are driving. Adjectives occur with degree words, very, to, so, etc. Very sad, too hungry, so oblivious. You may wonder why nouns like names and pronouns are not compatible with determiners. So you can't have the John or the me. That's because names and pronouns are technically determiners themselves. But that's not really something we'll worry about in this class, but just know that they are don't necessarily, they aren't going to have determiners with them. Okay, so the second part, phrase structure. So phrase structure, some observations are that sentences have noun phrases and verb phrases. All sentences have noun phrases and verb phrases. That's actually how you can tell that it's a complete sentence. In this situation, the noun phrase is the happy hippopotamus and the verb phrase is sing enthusiastically. Verbs can be intransitive or transitive or even ditransitive. The happy hippopotamus slept, and so intransitive means that there's no object that goes with slept. It's not the happy hippopotamus slept couch or the happy hippopotamus slept bed. It doesn't take an object. But you can have verbs that do, like the happy hippopotamus smacked the ball, and then some of them need even more. The happy hippopotamus put the ball in the pool, so put implies that it needs two. So some verbs can function as either. Happy hippopotamus drove is an intransitive with no object, but he can also drive his car, and so it's a transitive using the object car, and it can also the happy hippopotamus drove his car to his house, where it has an object, the car, and the direct object of house. This is going to become a little bit more relevant when we get to the complements of verbs a little bit later. So we are going to use X-bar theory in our class, and you can draw syntax trees without the X-bar, and you can even Google X-bar theory trees and you'll see a bunch of them that don't have the X-bar, but we actually are going to use the X-bar to keep it really really consistent so that we don't confuse ourselves and each other with our syntax trees. And the current model for research is called minimalism, which is different than X-bar theory, but we're going to use the X-bar theory to learn syntax is a good place to be. So in syntax trees, there's going to be several different types of phrases. There's noun phrases, adjective phrases, verb phrases, prepositional phrases, inflectional phrases, and complement phrases. And those are NP, AP, VP, PP, IP, and CP. And whenever you're going to see an XP, that X is just like a variable in math, where the X can get replaced with whatever you want. So, so the X might be a noun phrase, or the XP might be an adjective phrase, or the XP might be a verb phrase, or it might be prepositional phrase or inflectional phrase or complement phrase, but XP is a place marker to explain the whole concept, and then you fill in the blank with whichever type of phrase matches your situation. And you can see this in the top corner here. This is a picture actually straight out of your book. This format is the basis of the X-bar theory or syntax. And so, for example, if you have a noun phrase, then the XP will be an NP instead, and the X bar will be an N bar instead, and then the X would be an N instead, and the head of it will be the noun. So there's a head, a specifier, and a complement, and the head is the noun in a noun phrase. The specifier is a modifier of some sort that goes with the X. So determiners and adjectives are specifiers of nouns, and adverbs are specifiers to verbs. So determiners and adjectives are specifiers to NP. In the happy hippopotamus, hippopotamus is the head, and the and happy are both specifiers to NP. The complement is optional. So some phrases take complements and some don't. And some of them have to, though. Some are not optional because, like in verb phrases, there are certain verbs that have to have complements after them, like we showed you with the transitive and the ditransitive verbs. A phrase that is the object of the head is like is the complement of the whole structure right here. And then NPs are complements of PPs. So PPs are prepositional phrases, and prepositional phrases always have noun phrases as complements. So in the house is the head, and the house is the complement phrase, and that will be a new NP. So an NP with an N bar and with a specifier and an N bar, so it embeds within itself. So phrases have tiers: XP, X bar, and X. And so the example of the hippopotamus, just using the and hippopotamus to keep it simple, is the is the specifier and hippopotamus is the noun. And then every phrase, let's look at the note at the bottom. Every phrase contains all three tiers: XP, X bar, and X, regardless of whether there are specifiers and complements in them. So we do have a supplementary slide set showing you how to do this a little bit better. Also, the back of the chapter has some explanations on how to do some more phrase structures. It takes a while to go through and figure out how to do the phrase structures. So practice those a little bit so that you can do these syntax trees. So next we're going to talk about the categories of syntax. The sentences themselves. So the third part is the sentences themselves. So the sentence structure, this can throw you a little bit, but I think the easiest way to simplify it is, so sentences are made of inflectional phrases, and the inflection is the tense of the verb. And probably the best way to simplify it is in your head to just, instead of IP, put in SP, or put in S for sentence, right? So sentence is, and then sentence bar. So the sentence is going to have your noun phrase to the left, and then it's going to have your verb phrase to the right. The specifier of IP is the subject, the NP of the sentence. The complement of IP is the verb phrase of the sentence. So if you go back to that structure, you have the specifier to the left, which is the NP, and then you have the head, which is the tense, or the I, the tense and inflection. And then you have the complement, which is the VP. And this is how a regular sentence is set up. So if you'll just think of that IP as sentence, then that can help you a lot along the way. So it's IP is an inflectional phrase, and the I gives the inflection of the verb, and then it's also the position for the modal auxiliaries. So it kind of works out nicely, actually. So you can put will, can, could, would, might, must, and those actually have inflection within them. So it works pretty well. And then, but you can't put the non-modal auxiliaries like have, right? Because it would have to be will have or can be, right? The have and the be would need to be verbs themselves. So there's different ways to test the phrase structure. So when you are creating a tree for a sentence, you want to know whether you have a phrase structure or whether you have just an item within a phrase structure, right? So, and the constituent is a syntactic unit, and in X-bar theory, the constituent is going to be the XP, or so you're trying to find out if it's like a full noun phrase or if it's just a noun, or if it's a full prepositional phrase or if it's just a preposition, right? And you're trying to figure out what goes together as a phrase also, like if it's part of a prepositional phrase, which part goes with the prepositional phrase and which part goes with the noun phrase. Where do things land in our structures? So we can use tests to determine whether the set of words is a constituent. There's first the substitution, second movement, and third coordination. And I always use more than one when I'm trying to figure it out, just to make sure that I've got something nice and clear. So first is the substitution test. So a set of words is a constituent or phrase if it can be replaced by a single word phrase for noun phrases, adjective phrases, or others, and then the phrase do so for verb phrases. So here's the example. So they have good examples in your book too on this. Pronouns like they, he, it are single word NPs, and adverbs like there, here can replace some prepositional phrases. So here's the examples. Example 1 is to the store constituent in sentence 1. 1, I went to the store. So you can replace to the store with there, right? And that does work for a native speaker of the language. To the store can be replaced with there, therefore it is a constituent. Example 2, is store a constituent in sentence 1? I went to the there, or I went to the it. No, it can't be replaced. So it's not a constituent. Oddly so, you can say I went to it, and so the store is actually a constituent because the store is the noun phrase. To, so let's just be clear. So to the store is going to be a prepositional phrase here. The store is a noun phrase within the prepositional phrase, and store alone is a noun within the noun phrase. So store alone is not a constituent, it's not a phrase. So walked the dog, is that a constituent of 3? John walked the dog. And in this case, it's a verb phrase, so you can replace it with did so. John did so. It's kind of odd, but you can replace it with that. Walked the dog is a constituent, right? Also, the dog is a constituent in this too, right? Because you could say John walked it. And the dog is a noun phrase within the verb phrase of walked the dog. So within the sentence, John walked the dog. So you can see how these things are getting embedded at this point. How about this one? The happy couple strolled through the park. Is the happy couple a constituent? Well, you can have they strolled through the park. So the happy couple is a constituent. That is going to be a phrase by itself. Here's the example of I went to the store in a tree. Okay, so it shows that to the store is a constituent. Well, let's start at the very bottom. So the store is a noun phrase, so that is a constituent. So I went to it works, right? To the store is also a constituent because that is a prepositional phrase. Went to the store is another constituent because that is a verb phrase. In example 2 shows that store itself, though, is not a constituent because it's an N, but it's not a phrase, right? So the store is the noun phrase at the bottom there. So you can see how these are getting embedded within each other. You've got a noun phrase within a prepositional phrase within a verb phrase within a sentence. So another way to test it is through the movement test. Constituents can be moved to the front of the sentence. So it doesn't work for the main noun phrase and verb phrase of a sentence. So they saying, the noun phrase cannot be moved to the front of the sentence, it's already there. Saying cannot be moved to the front of the sentence. Saying they is not grammatical anymore. So, but generally it works really well for prepositional phrases and adverbial phrases. So they sing very happily, and you can pull out very happily and move it to the front. Very happily, they sing. And again, you can't take the whole verb phrase from the second part. You can't say sing very happily they. It doesn't work with that, but it does work with the adverb phrase very happily they sing. They sing at the party. You can pick up the prepositional phrase at the party and put it at the beginning. At the party they sing. And let's see, party they sing at the. So that doesn't work because you can't just pick up the noun and put it at the beginning of the word. So you have to pick up you'd have to pick up more to be able to have it be a grammatical and correct sentence. The next one is the coordination test. So a set of words is a constituent if it can be coordinated with another set of words. So that means to put them together. So and, but, or, nor, yet are the conjunction words that do that. Here's the example. Ate the ice cream. Is that a constituent in the sentence below? Sally ate the ice cream. Yes, because you can do Sally ate the ice cream and drank the soda, right? Ate the ice cream can be coordinated with another set of words, so it is a constituent. Likewise, you could do Sally ate the ice cream and the cone, right? So the ice cream is a noun phrase and the cone is a noun phrase also. Ate the ice cream is a verb phrase and drank the soda is a verb phrase. So those are all constituents. Next section is the complement options. So we're going to go through for verbs, for other categories, and then complement clauses. So first of all, verbs. The types of complements a phrase have depends on the type of phrase and the head of the phrase. So options for verbs. VPs, verb phrases, can have an NP or a noun phrase complement, but not all VPs or verb phrases allow an NP or noun phrase complement. So John ate the pizza, that's an NP complement. The pizza is a noun phrase that comes after ate, which is the V in the sentence. And then, but you can't have John laughed the pizza. So again, that's an intransitive verb. So you can't have laughed the pizza. For some VPs, verb phrases, the NP, noun phrase, complement is optional. So John ate the pizza or John ate. Either way works fine. For some VPs, the NP complement is not optional. So John took the test, but it can't just be John took. So took is a transitive verb that requires a noun phrase after it. Some VPs take multiple complements. So John gave the pillow to his daughter. And those are the ditransitive. And it needs the noun phrase and it needs the prepositional phrase afterwards. And then your textbook actually on page 169 has a nice little table with these, a more complete one. So check that out. Next, for other categories. So NPs take PP complements. So the book on the table. Noun phrase is the book, and the complement in there is the prepositional phrase on the table. PPs, or prepositional phrases, take NP or PP complements. So out is a preposition, and through the door is a prepositional phrase that goes within the prepositional phrase of out through the door. Out again is a preposition, and the door is a noun phrase that goes within the verb phrase or within the prepositional phrase out the door. I do always tell students when we're trying to learn complete sentences that if you can figure out what a prepositional phrase is, then and realize that those are always subcategories, you can figure out your whether sentences are complete rather easily, actually. So adjective phrases take prepositional phrase complements. So sad, about the loss. Generous, with his money. And then table 5.6 to 5.8 on page 170 of the textbook is another good table that shows you the different types of phrases that are complements to different to the phrases other than verb phrases. Okay, so complement clauses. Verbs can take sentences as complements. This is where it gets interesting. Right, so Allie asked whether I fed the cat. So I fed the cat is an entire sentence in and of itself. And here, now we're taking an IP or an S and putting it inside of a CP, and the specifier is the complement. And then that is going inside of the larger IP or sentence. So you have a sentence within a complement phrase within a sentence. In the sentence above, Allie asked is the matrix clause, okay, and whether I fed the cat is the embedded clause. And then the embedded clause is always the CP phrase, and it always has a full sentence inside of it. I fed the cat is the full sentence. And CP takes IP as a complement. And so the CP of whether I fed the cat takes IP, I fed the cat, as the complement, and this head of the CP is the complementizer. Whether is the head of the CP. So complementizers are words that introduce embedded clauses. Examples of complementizers are that, whether, if, and for. So those are the words, those are the keywords that you find inside of sentences that add entirely new sentences within it to have complete sentences. So here's a nice tree structure of that. Okay, so let's start. I like to start at the bottom, right? So cat is just a noun, and the cat is the noun phrase. Fed the cat is the verb phrase, and the complement of the verb phrase is the cat. And then let's see, the IP or the sentence is I fed the cat, and the tense is past in the IP. So I is in this embedded sentence, the I, meaning the person I, meaning me, is the main noun phrase, and fed the cat is the main verb phrase. But then that is a complementizer. Whether is the complementizer that takes that entire sentence and puts it inside of another sentence. So that's a CP then. So you have an IP within a CP. Whether I fed the cat is the CP that is the complement of the verb phrase of asked, which goes in the main IP or the main sentence, where so the subject of the sentence is Allie, and then the predicate of the sentence is asked whether I fed the cat.